As the world marked the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, many remember the work of Nicholas Winton, who saved hundreds of Jewish children from Nazi concentration camps by bringing them to the UK.
Well, he kept his heroic actions a secret, even from his own wife. But in one of the greatest ever moments on television, he was reunited with some of those that he saved. On the programme, That's Life, Gargi Patel has his story.
He was a quiet young man who saved hundreds of children from the Nazis. Nicholas Winton saw firsthand the refugee camps set up in Czechoslovakia. He risked his own life organising Kindertransport, trains that ran through Nazi Germany to the Dutch coast, and then ships bound for England, where the youngsters were looked after by foster families. Some never saw their own parents again. Nicholas never spoke about his humanitarian rescues to anyone, until the That's Life programme featured his bravery in a special broadcast.
Can I ask, is there anyone in our audience tonight who owes their life to Nicholas Winton? If so, could you stand up, please?
It was an emotional moment that captivated the country. Nicholas was reunited with some of the 669 children he'd saved. Many remained his good friends until he died aged 106. Because of him, they were free to live their lives and have children of their own. But they still call themselves Winton's children.
Remarkable moment. And joining us now, Lady Milena Grenfell-Baines, John Fieldsend and Lord Dubbs, who as children were all saved by Sir Nicholas Winton and were there at that moment, along with the presenter of That's Life, Dame Esther Ransom. Well, welcome to you all, and it's amazing to see you. Milena, let's begin with you. Lovely to see you. I mean, he did an extraordinary thing.
It was amazing. And, of course, we didn't know anything about it for 40-odd years. Until one morning I got a phone call, and this lady says, "This is Esther Ransom." And I said, "And I'm the Queen of England." because
She nearly was, actually,
I
ironically.
did not believe it. I thought somebody was playing a joke. And then you said, "No, I really am Esther Ransom. Is your name Milena Fleischmann?" And that's, it took off from there.
It's an amazing moment. I mean, I think it's the greatest moment of television I've ever seen. When you look back at that, John, you were all in that room. Nicholas Winton didn't know what was going on. He didn't know he was surrounded by people he'd saved. And the moment he did, he got emotional.
Yeah.
And it was spine-tingling.
It was.
What was it like for you?
Well, we were fairly pre-warned. So it was exciting. It was thrilling.
And when you saw that man who'd been responsible for saving so many young lives, what did you feel about him?
Well, he was a very ordinary man doing very extraordinary things. Yeah. One thing, I was at an art exhibition with a friend, and there was a picture of a red dot on a white background, and my friend said, "I could have done that." And the artist said, "But you didn't."
Yeah.
And I think that sums up Nicholas.
Lord Dubbs, I mean, the more I've looked at that video, especially the extended version, the more extraordinary the enormity of what he did becomes to me. I can't even imagine what it's like for someone like you.
Well, I found it overwhelming, and it was fantastic to meet Nicky Winton, you know, because we all knew he'd come on a Kindertransport, but until then we didn't know who'd done it, who'd organised it, who'd helped us. And we got to know him very well. We became friends of his, and we were...
What kind of man was he?
Well, he was amusing. He didn't suffer fools gladly, but he was funny. He loved conversation, loved talking politics. He had wonderful birthday parties. He lived in Maidenhead. The first time I met Theresa May, she came as a local MP to his 100th birthday party. So he had tremendous lot of friends, and well, yeah, they were politically different, but they were friends.
Dame Esther Ransom, he organised the Kindertransport, got hundreds of children out of Czechoslovakia, 1939. I mean, saved their lives, hundreds of them. Just explain how he did it, why he did it, what motivated him, and how he felt about it.
Well, he was a young man on his way to a skiing holiday with a friend, and the friend said to him, "Why don't you just pause at Prague? What's happening in Czechoslovakia is quite interesting." So he said, "Okay." He arrived in Prague and he discovered that the refugees from Sudetenland, which the Nazis had already invaded, were arriving in Czechoslovakia, being put into refugee camps, which he visited in appalling circumstances. But there was a small cohort of people who were organising for some people to be rescued, because people understood that the Nazis were going to continue their invasion into Czechoslovakia. And he said the thing that the ordinary man said that was so extraordinary. He said, "What's happening to the children?" And the people said, well, we haven't really thought about that. So he created a fictional committee to rescue the children. He created a title for himself. He went round to a print shop and got himself some headed paper. And from that moment on, he was head of a committee to rescue particularly Jewish children from the Nazi.
And what was amazing, Esther, was he kept a log of all these kids, but he never really knew what happened to any of them.
Well,
you then did all the research.
Yes.
And his wife had given you this logbook, and you found these extraordinary people.
Yes, yes.
But there's an untold story, because when the First Lady gets up next to him, and you introduce him, well, let's watch that moment, and then I'll explain what happened.
That was Vera.
Well, that's at the end. Do you have the bit at the start when Esther does the first one?
This is the second one.
That's the second bit.
Yes.
Okay. Look, there's an initial bit where one lady gets up, the one actually to his right as you look at
She's
that,
sitting next to him.
and you got so emotional.
Yeah, that's
just by the first, and you knew that the whole studio was full of people.
Well, you know,
but you got so emotional, you had to leave the stage.
You know how ruthless, I was the producer of That's Life as well as the presenter, and you know how ruthless television producers are, and I had
we're just going to let's watch it actually.
Have you got it?
So I want the viewers to understand what happened.
We did find her name on his list. Vera Gissing is with us here tonight. Hello, Vera. And I should tell you that you are actually sitting next to Nicholas Winton. Is there anyone in our audience tonight who owes their life to Nicholas Winton? If so, could you stand up, please?
So those are the two remarkable moments. But it was after even the First Lady to stand reduced you
Absolutely.
to an unsurprising emotional wreck.
Well, what happened was that we had said to Nicky that he couldn't sit next to his wife, and it took years for him to forgive me. He was furious with me for forcing him to sit next to these strangers in the front row.
His wife never came.
Because obviously I knew that he'd saved them. They didn't know he'd saved them. And when Vera turned to him and said, "Thank you for my life," it was the only time that I had to stop, because it was so moving. And I just got off my rather strange high stool and went behind the scenes and blew my nose and wiped my eyes, because That's Life was recorded as live, and then we had to start again and edit it.
How old were you when you were rescued on his kinder transport?
Oh, well, I was 9.
You were 9
I
years
was
old.
9.
Were you reunited with your family?
Yes, I had my story is different. My father was responsible for getting a Czech passport for Thomas Mann, the German writer, and was warned to leave Prague 2 days before the Germans invaded. And my mother managed to get out in 1940. I was one of the very few children who actually was reunited. But we were first lived with an English family in Ashton-under-Lyne, and they who took us in, he was the secretary of the local Labour Party. They only had 2 bedrooms. They sent their daughter to live with their grandmother so they could take us in. And then eventually my mother arrived. And so
absolutely remarkable. We could talk about this a lot longer. It's just a special story. It's an amazing moment of television. It came about last week again because of the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. We wanted to get you here to just explain, I think, to viewers that when I say that's the greatest bit of TV ever made, Esther, I think it is the greatest moment of television I've ever watched.
Well, can I just say, Nicky would be so thrilled, Sir Nicholas Winton, because what he wanted more than anything else was for his legacy to live on.
Yeah.
He didn't want any more Holocausts.
Yeah.
He felt we had to learn from history. And I think he would really be pleased, not for himself, because he had no vanity as far as I could tell. And actually, he just, having done what he did, he moved on and lived the rest of his life until That's Life intervened.
Amazing. Amazing moment. Well, listen, thank you.
Milena
Thank you all
and
very
John
much. We really
Lord,
appreciate
thank
you coming in to
Thank
relive
you.
that.
So good to see